Hello, children. I'm Alice Cooper, and this is the soundtrack of my life. The very first song I remember hearing on the radio wasn't Elvis, it was probably Chuck Berry. I lived in Detroit, and my parents were very much into music. My dad was a big band guy. You know, they were jitterbug champions. They were actually jitterbug, big 40s big band champion dancing. They were great. But I remember my uncle coming over and putting a 45 on, and it was Chuck Berry's, probably Maybelline or something like that. And I thought it was the greatest thing I'd ever heard. But Chuck Berry was the basis of everything that we do. He could tell a story in 3 minutes, and that's how I learned how to write lyrics, listening to Chuck Berry. I think honestly, Elvis Presley was the one that we watched on Ed Sullivan, you know, on Sunday, because Ed Sullivan was a tradition, and we were used to seeing Tony Bennett and Frank Sinatra and that, and all of a sudden here was this guy, and the girls were screaming. I couldn't figure that out. I don't know what they were screaming about. You know, I'm 7 years old, and here's this guy that was doing all this stuff, and I found myself going, yeah, this is very cool. I think he did Hound Dog, you know, and it was, to me, revolutionary at the time. Very first album I ever bought was All Summer Long by the Beach Boys. I was about 12, 13, 14 years old, and a big Beach Boys fan, because we listened to top 40 radio all the time. We had our little transistor radios, you know, and the top 40 was the king of everything. It was the Four Seasons, the Beach Boys, all those great acts from that era, pre-Beatles. So the Beach Boys were basically America's Beatles. They could do no wrong. They had, everything they did was great. And then, of course, when at 15, 16 years old, the Beatles came along, changed everything. So the first album I bought, though, was All Summer Long by the Beach Boys. Very first show I ever went to, I'm very proud of this, I went to see the Rolling Stones at this gigantic arena. Most of your rock bands would come in and play clubs, you know. But we went to see the Rolling Stones. There was no production. It was 5 guys, Brian Jones, Bill Wyman, the original Rolling Stones, on this little stage, and I think they did 35 minutes. But we knew every song, you know, from that first album. It was the coolest thing I ever saw. I think it was probably the first Beatles album was the thing that made me actually want to, I said, that is where I want to go. The original guys in the band, this is very odd about this, we were all on the track and cross country team. We were all distance runners. So it was very weird that the most maybe notorious band of all time, the Alice Cooper Band, were all 4-year lettermen. We all, you know, every year that you would letter in a sport, varsity, you'd get a stripe on your sweater. We had 4 stripes, and we had medals all over because we were like state champions and all that. And we had to hide that because we were the rock and roll band, and we didn't want anybody to know that we were jocks also, you know. But we did that before we put the band together. As soon as we heard the Beatles and the Stones and everybody, we immediately said, well, at least we're going to play parties. Chicks will be at parties. We can grow our hair a little bit long. We can learn these Beatles songs and these Kink songs and play parties. And then it went from there and exploded. I cannot stand Pretty Woman by Roy Orbison, and I love Roy Orbison. And then Van Halen had the nerve to do it again, so now I have to listen to it again. You know, it was great when it came out. It just got overplayed. And Brown Eyed Girl is getting to be like that too. You turn the radio on and that song is just on all the time. And I love Van Morrison with them. I mean, they were one of the greatest bands of all time. One of the most underappreciated bands of all time. But those 2 songs, you know, especially Pretty Woman, I just really got so sick of that song. Oh, I could do any Beatles song karaoke. In fact, there's a band in Phoenix called Saucy Jack. 3, 4 guys, and they do every Beatles song perfectly. And every once in a while, there'll be a charity gig where I'll get up and we'll do like an hour of just, you know, the original first 3 albums, Beatles, and we do every song, you know, and that is so much fun to do. Brown Sugar may be the best dance song of all time. That's when we're doing covers, you know, just having fun, we'll go and play a bar after a show, you know, just to be a bar band, and start out with dun 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 dun. Everybody jumps up, starts dancing. That's probably the dance song of all time. It's usually a commercial. It's usually some commercial, that's some little ditty that's in your head, you know. It's the real thing. Coke is the real thing. And you can't get it out of your brain. When you're writing new songs, and there are songs that you can't get out of your head because you're writing the song, and now you left the studio and you're playing golf the next day, and that song is still in your head, that's a good sign. There was a song, Fallen in Love and I Can't Get Up, on the new album that I couldn't get out of my head for months, you know, which is good because that means that it had that staying power. That's the kind of song you do want in your head. But a lot of times it's you know, ABBA or something, you know, and you're going, get out of my brain. Dude Looks Like a Lady, I should have written. Smells Like Teen Spirit, I should have written. Those were songs that were right up Alice Cooper's alley, that I heard them and I kicked myself, thinking, oh my gosh, I should have wrote that song, you know. There are some that are just so good that you just sit there and you go, I could never write that. Oh, I would say, honestly, I would say what really did change my life was She Loves You by the Beatles. That was the first Beatles song I ever heard. And it literally changed something in my brain. It took me someplace new that I went, it probably inspired what Alice Cooper became. I read an article recently that kind of coordinates with that. There were conversations with McCartney, and he says, the first time I heard No More Mr. Nice Guy, it scared me. I went, that's one of our probably most tame pop songs that we had a hit with. But he says it was pop getting dangerous. And I went, wow, that's a good compliment. I scared Paul McCartney. Well, it would be a hymn. It wouldn't be one of my songs. It would be How Great Thou Art. It's just one of those great hymns, one of those old time hymns that kind of like takes the focus off you and puts it on where it should be. I don't think it would be a rock song. You know, Welcome to My Nightmare, I don't think would be appropriate.